Folks in mob-run regions must wonder why thugs and parasites just won't leave them alone. Likewise, for those victimized by the mob of a different name, the Hydra-headed mafia of government. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV. In this learning opportunity, we get to see internecine mob squabbling. And we get to watch one agency attack another, all subsidized by us, the real victims. In this case, it's the burdensome, annoying, uncompetitive United States Postal Service, the USPS, versus the constitutionally unfounded Nixon-era Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, which could be called the Environmental Shakedown Agency thanks to its long history of dubious so-called protection claims, its history of inflammatory scaremongering, and its attacks on innocent property owners who haven't harmed anyone. The issue is the new fleet of 160,000 mail trucks the USPS plans to buy for a measly $11.3 billion over the next 10 years. To the agencies and at least one so-called news source, the issue is not that you really have no choice in the matter, and the issue is not that the EPA really shouldn't exist, or that the USPS has a long history of trying to block competition and was integral in starting the unconstitutional federal stranglehold of air travel known as the Federal Aviation Administration going back to the 1920s. No. In this inter-mafia squabble, you can't escape. The issue is over whether the USPS will complete its purchase of fossil fuel gasoline-powered trucks, or it will bow to the EPA and buy electric trucks, powered, of course, by fossil fuels burned at plants that generate electricity sent through government-run or government-licensed power lines. And it's all something that one of the biggest so-called newspapers in the U.S. blindly accepts as the EPA doing right. It's standard operating procedure for this glorious bureaucracy in its quest to save us from the boogeyman that the media accepts as, well, of course, real, anthropogenic climate change. Write Anna Phillips and Jacob Bogage for The Washington Post, quote, "The EPA and the White House Council on Environmental Quality sent letters to the Postal Service on Wednesday that urge it to reconsider plans to buy mostly gas-powered vehicles and conduct a new, more thorough technical analysis." End quote. Technical analysis. That's kind of ironic. They sent letters to the UPS. Anyway, mild amusement aside, even if you can call it amusement, it's gallows humor, really, for those of us who are actually forced to pay for all of this idiocy. Quote, "The dispute over the Postal Service's plans to spend up to $11.3 billion on as many as 165,000 new delivery trucks over the next decade has major implications for President Biden's goal of converting all federal cars and trucks to clean power. Postal Service vehicles make up a third of the government's fleet. And the EPA warned the agency last fall that its environmental analysis of the contract rested on flawed assumptions and missing data. Did anyone notice how these so-called reporters assume that electric vehicles are clean power? As I've noted for MRC-TV, not only do electric vehicles get their energy from coal plants, natural gas plants, or in some cases, wasteful, unreliable, and carbon-unfriendly wind farms or nuclear energy plants, the energy has to be sent over dangerous power lines that can spark fires, then has to be loaded into heavy and chemically caustic batteries. a process that takes a long time. And by the way, most homes don't have the right power input capacity to handle what are called fast charges of 15 to 30 minutes for vehicles. They require slow electric load, taking hours so that they don't start fires. It remains to be seen how the EPA plans on making the USPS charge its fleet, either with domestic level charging or with higher capacity so-called fast chargers. Jeez, to claim in any way that such vehicles are clean is absurd and journalistic malpractice. It seems that flawed assumptions and missing data are whatever the Washington Post and EPA claim they are. Definitions and terms are completely malleable, as is data when dealing with the political train wreck that is the anthropogenic climate change fable. Continue our intrepid auteurs. Quote, transportation is the largest single source of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, and even rising sales of electrical vehicles have yet to make a dent. Electric vehicle proponents had hoped the Postal Service purchase would provide a boost for the industry. End quote. Again, clear-minded folk might pause to check the Washington Post assumption of the shorthand greenhouse gas emissions, when man-made emissions of CO2, the main gas in question, have not been proven to be the driver of Earth's climate. Leave it to these Washington Post reporters to pepper their report with assumptive wording. For example, they write that the EPA objection came as a surprise. Those are their words to USPS officials. How do they know that? Well, they provide no evidence, of course. Quote, the objections took senior postal leaders by surprise. The Postal Service's governing board was largely unaware of tension around the environmental impacts of the trucks, according to 3 people involved with the contract who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal deliberations. The House plans to vote in the coming days on legislation relieving the Postal Service of much, yeah, you got it, of its debt, which exceeds $200 billion. And the individuals said postal officials privately worry that an ugly spat over its environmental record could spur congressional Democrats to delay the vote. End quote. Oh, man. So, as the House plans to vote on whether they'll shift much of the USPS $200 billion debt onto you and your neighbor, you get to watch as the sophists argue about what color glove to wear as they pick your pocket. Or to put it another way, whether the glove is carbon neutral or not. Oh, and one final note here. In the Washington Post piece, the writers say that the EPA mob are what they call policy makers. To me, this smacks of the flip side of the up-and-coming term stakeholder that's being rolled out by politicians and bureaucrats to rhetorically pick winners and friends in their increasingly fascist schema of handouts and favors, all at your expense. Oh yeah, policymakers and stakeholders. Well, you're not a stakeholder. And it seems as if Joe Biden and many other politicians want to chain everyone into a federally controlled electric grid that will favor their stakeholders. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Remember, keep the faith, keep smiling, and keep spreading the word. Thanks so much for being here. Remember, if you get the opportunity, please like and subscribe on YouTube, find us on Rumble, and share the videos far and wide. We'll see you inside Facebook. We'll see you on Twitter. We'll see you on Instagram and TikTok. And we'll see you on Rumble, where they don't censor us. Please head to Rumble. And by the way, if you can, tell some friends to sign up over there as well. Really terrific. Not to be censored or not to have to worry about that. For MRC TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.